Now, when it comes to creating websites, web standards is what it's all about nowadays. Now, web standards is a special type of programming that uses different technologies that we already know about to create what are valid professional websites. So the technologies that we basically have are XHTML, which is the XML version of HTML. We'll talk about that a little bit. CSS, cascading style sheets, and this thing called the document object model, which requires something called a document type definition. We'll talk about that as well. There are other technologies as well that are part of the web standards list of technologies, but it's really more about a method for designing websites than it is really about these technologies. It's about how you use them. So here's the ideals of web standards. The very first thing is to separate content from presentation, and that is using HTML for the markup only, and then CSS for the way that content looks. That's the presentation. The next thing is to use semantically correct markup, and that's structuring the content so it makes logical sense. When you look at it, you know exactly what that code is for. And we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. The last thing is this idea of well-formed, valid XHTML code. Now, this is structuring your markup so it is error-free, it's precise, and it is going to validate using what's called a document type definition that says, hey, this is a strict XHTML page, and the code reflects that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too. The very first thing is about separating content from presentation. When you use XHTML for the markup only, you can use CSS in one separate file that's linked to all of your HTML files to make the website look the way that you want. And the cool thing about it is you might have the exact same code on each page, but notice how the page looks different each time. And that is the CSS is actually allowing us to change the look of the entire website just from one file. And of course that takes some time to develop the skills and understanding how that works, but we'll get started that in our project. So the next thing is using semantically correct markup. Now, semantics is the study of meaning, which means, hey, if this is a heading, make it a heading. If it's a paragraph, make it a paragraph. And so here's some code that I have just as example code. And if you take a look at it, whoops, maybe if I can get my mouse back, we have our head section here in the title, and so that's pretty semantic. It says Demo Web Standards Site, so that makes sense to what that is. Then we have a division, and that division is called header. Well, what do we expect to find in our header? We expect to find a title, such as this H1, Welcome to Web Standards, and then maybe on another division, which is our navigation, and that ends that particular header section. Now we start a new section called Content. Inside there we might find a new heading, which is the heading for the content, then a paragraph, which is information, of course, what the content is. And of course it goes beyond just this simple example, but it's really about making sure that the markup is logical and makes sense when you just look at it. If it's the heading of the website, call it the heading, or header of the website, call it the header. If it's the content in your website, then call it that. So, it also goes into how you structure your content, this idea of semantics. This is the way that we used to do links in the past. Go here. Or it says, for more information, visit here, or click here, or something. And that doesn't really make much sense. Where is here? Well, if we use something like visit the DME website, and that particular text is underlined, and we know it's a link, you can see that it changes to a hand cursor, then it's more semantic because it means exactly what we're going to be clicking on and linking to. Now, the last thing that's part of the web standards is this idea of well-formed, valid XHTML. And this is going to take a little bit more time to talk about, so let's go ahead and go on to the next video.